这是一个非常隆重的、热烈的仪式。现在有5万观众，希望大家。
四军老战士申秉辰99岁，八路军老战士张群100岁，八路军老战士刘世业94岁，八路军老战士傅英102岁，华南游击队香港老战士罗定辉94岁，
老英雄，
国民党抗日老兵宋其祥100岁。
全体肃立。
和睦相处，始终是党和人民全军将士要忠实履行神圣职责，加快建设世界一流军队，坚决维护国家主权、统一、领土完整，为实现中华民族伟大复兴提供战略支撑。 念中国人民抗日战争及世界反法西斯战争胜利8。
主席同志，受阅部队列队完毕，请您检阅。
Have we run out of milk?
Make more room for beauty with the hottest brands at Boots.
Don't worry, found it.
同志们好！同志们辛苦了！同志们辛苦了！
All right. Hello, everyone. Let me make these pictures a bit big. Hello. Can you hear me?
Hold on a second. I don't think I'm able to hear you right now.
I can
Give me
hear
a
you and
second.
see you. Anyway, yeah. I can hear you.
Okay, I can hear you now.
Okay, good.
That was the
Hi.
setting on the. Hi, how are you doing? Sorry for the delay, and thank you very much for being so accommodating with the schedule change. It's just been a hectic few days, and I'm also leaving Taiwan tomorrow for a quick trip. So just getting ready for
No
that
problem.
too.
You're doing me the favor. So I have no, and I'm always, first of all, hi, everyone.
Oh yes, yes. Hello everyone. We're live right now. I just
Yeah.
forgot.
Welcome to Morbid Symptoms. I'm your host, Tara Van Dyke, and I'm very happy to have Xiangyu.
Yes.
Oh my God. Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate that because I'm not going to go over and I do the best I can with names. Anyway, Xiangyu,
Yes.
hi.
Hello.
And welcome back. And yes, so yeah, I mean, I don't know what it is. It's because I do this from home that I always seem to go from having all kinds of time to no time.
That
So just
happens.
about 5 minutes ago, I was like pushing all my kids out, like, get out of the living room. I'm coming in. I'm broadcasting. And microphone and ring light. And it's just, I don't know what. And they look at me like, why are you so disorganized? And what can I tell them? Anyway, so who cares? Here we are. And I can hear you and you can hear me. So we will assume that people watching on the various channels can as well, or they'll let us know. So today's topic is, or the title is China and the West Identity Crisis. United States, in terms of one of the themes of the show is looking at the various indications or expressions of denial, bargaining, anger, depression, whatever people can do to avoid acceptance that the world is changing, has changed in ways that our ideological framework or conceptual frameworks haven't caught up to yet. So there's a lot of growing pains, so to speak. And I wanted to have Xiangyu on because obviously you don't have to be, Chinese or Taiwanese to know these things, but it's always nice when you have somebody who has, more skin in the game and I don't know what keeps up in the DNA. And I just want to ask before I forget, I know you've told me this before, but when I think of Taiwan and China, I think of like Taiwan being a Chinese state. So like I would say there's Americans and there's like Texans and Virginians and New Yorkers and whatnot. Is that a fair analogy for people who are in Taiwan and who are and consider themselves part of China?
I think it is a fair analysis. Factually, the fact of the matter is, Taiwan is a part of China, regardless of whether you go by the laws of the People's Republic of China or the laws that govern Taiwan, the so-called Republic of China. Now, I think what makes it complicated is there are actors within Taiwan who are ideological separatists, but because they don't have they don't actually have the courage to go through with their separatism, they kind of blur the lines between what the so-called Republic of China is, what Taiwan is, and they'll say things like Taiwan is already an independent country whose name is the Republic of China. But the laws of the Republic of China don't view it that way. It's more like China is one country. And in Chinese history, dynasties come and go. Sometimes there are remnants of a previous dynasty that still governs some parts of China. Other times there are two concurrent dynasties after, let's say, like the fall of the Han. You had like the three warring kingdoms and they all claimed legitimacy over all of China. And the thing about Taiwan separatism is you have a group of people just going, no, we want to rage quit. We don't want to see ourselves as Chinese anymore. We are a whole separate country. And of course, in the new age where there is something called, international relations and there's world hegemony led by the US, they will take advantage of these sorts of internal contradictions for their own geopolitical benefits. So yes, Taiwan is a part of China, no matter whose books you go by, but there are people that try to push the idea that it is a separate country or that it was originally a separate country or something like that. And a lot of the people in Taiwan have been, I guess, influenced by this line of thinking. After all, the DPP's been in power since 2016 until today, and they were in power for the first time from 2000 to 2008. So there is a new generation that was brought up to not think of themselves as Chinese because of changes to the curriculum. You know how in America, when you're in first grade, you learn about, the American Revolution, who George Washington was, who Paul Revere was, and all of that stuff. So it kind of, through that education, kids understand what it means to be American or whatever. And in Taiwan, it was the same thing in the past. You go to school, you learn about the various Chinese dynasties, you learn about Chinese geography, the easternmost part of Chinese territory, the highest peak of China, which is in Mount Everest or whatever. But then they starting in like the late 1990s, early 2000s, they started divorcing, and they're like, okay, we're going to start learning about Taiwan's history first. And then we learned about Chinese history. So whereas in the past, Taiwan history and all that stuff was taught as a part of Chinese history. So it's like Taiwan history. And then the second year you learn about like Chinese history. And then the third year it's like world history. So it creates a sort of divide, like subconsciously in the minds of many people. And then more recently, they changed the Chinese part to East Asian. So now they learn about Taiwan and then East Asia and then world history. So it's very subtle. They don't have the audacity to actually go through with, declaring formal independence. So they start doing these things to create inconveniences for cross-strait reconciliation. And can you believe, even in the 1980s, if you publicly promoted Taiwan separatism in Taiwan, you get thrown in jail. You're on mute.
Yeah, there's I don't know, there's a crime wave here. It seems like every time I'm downstairs, there's sirens.
Oh.
They haven't found me yet, though. Yeah, I just said that they don't want that heat. It's like, shh. I'd imagine. Okay, and also I would encourage people. This is the third time that Xiangyu's been on this program, and one of them was about Marxist men coming out of the gender closet to speak freely about the gender identity craziness. And there's also one that was totally Taiwan focused. So I would suggest that people go on to that because, of course, Taiwan is part of this conversation that we're having today, but it's not the main focus. So I would encourage people to look at that. And later on, when I'm doing my little edits, I will flag that in the corner. Okay, but what I asked you, what I invited you on to talk about today is first things. It was the interesting, well, three things. I wanted to get your take on what was being communicated by the 80th Victory Day celebration in China. I think that was back in September already.
September 3rd.
September 3rd, yeah. So the 80th anniversary of the end of their World War II, which I'm assuming is when Japan got pushed out.
Oh, it wasn't really exactly. It was a part of World War II, but we call it the War of Resistance against Japanese imperialism because World War II, I mean, the beginning of World War II was different in every country. Some countries see it as earlier, like in America didn't enter until Pearl Harbor, for example. Whereas China's resistance against Japan began as early as 1931. Some mark it as 1937. It depends on how you view it because it began in the Northeast in 1931, and then it became a whole like nationwide resistance as by 1937. So it's 8 to 14 years. So yeah, but yeah.
And I got to tell you, when I first saw Trump, and we'll get to Trump's tweets, that'll be.
Say hi to Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un. That one.
Well, it was just. I'll give. I mean, it's foreign. Yeah, of course, it's interesting to play like what is he thinking game. Although he tweets everything he thinks, so it makes it easy. However, yes, when this was coming out, and my first thought was, oh, Trump must be so jealous. Look at that military parade. I don't know, for people who don't know, it might have been a few months before this. He wanted to have some sort of military parade in Washington, D.C. And I got to tell you, the Chinese military parade put that sad military parade to shame.
Oh, the American ones, the soldiers
I was
weren't
imagining
even
Trump was watching
properly.
this being like, God damn it, I didn't get this, so go ahead.
I think well, the thing is, this particular parade marked the end of the war against Japan, and that carries a very deep meaning in China. So it's not just to flex China's muscles on the world stage. It is also just doing good to the Chinese people. Because if the military parade celebrating the 80th anniversary of Japan's defeat was as sad as that aforementioned U.S. military parade, yeah, the people of China would not be very happy, to say the least.
Yeah. Well, and it was kind of, I mean, and people, the cope was real, yeah. So I remember people like, oh, well, people are talking about the marching instead of walking, but that's authoritarian military parades. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Cope along.
Militaries are by nature authoritarian if you want them to work.
I know it's like top down, but
Yeah.
it was kind of like it was just there wasn't I didn't see any marching. I saw kind of sauntering and walking. So I don't know if that was a way of if that was a passive aggressive way of some of the military people not really like being so hip on having to perform for the great leader. I don't know. But it's worth watching. There's lots of you can watch the whole thing with or without subtitles, and it's worth watching. It was really impressive. I mean, it was almost kind of odd to say, but especially with the marching and the formation, it was like it was oddly soothing. I don't know why, because I'm like, this is a military, but I was like, this is really soothing watching these people, all this kind of collective coordination and whatnot.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, you know what I mean? I was like, wow, I could just kind of
because it's order. It's orderly. Seeing things moving in an orderly fashion is just by nature soothing. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't soothing for them to, but I mean, for us to watch, it's definitely soothing.
And I mean, in that posture, I gotta tell you, these people, the posture is very good.
Yes.
Anyway, so getting a bit more serious. Some of the things that I'll paint a broad picture, and then we'll go in, and then I'll ask you to microscope in on some particularities. Your thoughts on that. So in general, I think particularly the United States, but maybe the West in general, is having a really hard time accepting that there's countries in the world, China in particular, that they just can't push around, that these are peers and in some ways have surpassed them if you look, depending on what metric you want to use. And so I think there's this weird kind of identity crisis and not being able to figure out how to deal with this changing circumstances. And I think that it's not only deindustrialization that happened in the United States since, I don't know, I guess in earnest and since the 80s, that probably started in the 70s, is that they've de-skilled themselves diplomatically. It's like I'm assuming. I guess I don't. I don't want to praise Kissinger and people like that, but at least they weren't idiots. I mean, they could be nefarious, but you got to explain like they knew things. Yeah.
I think one thing to really think about is this: during the Cold War, there was a collective goal in America to defeat communism. And then for a while, I guess after 9/11, there was this collective consciousness in America that, we need to defend freedom and defeat terrorism. But then after it's been 24 years after 9/11, people are starting to question the whole, war on terror and all of that. And now we're at a phase where it's like, okay, what is the goal? Whereas China's collective goal is very easy: national rejuvenation. It's build after the century of humiliation, starting with the Opium War, and then later exacerbated by the first Sino-Japanese War. I mean, when you are part of a greater project, the civilizational project, it's it kind of solves that whole like collective identity crisis issue by default.
But in particular, I mean, I want to focus more on the political elite of it all.
Right.
And this idea that, for example, the kind of de-skilling, so that this idea that they don't know. What do I want to say? Like, I'm thinking like Mark Rubio, Peter Hegseth, Trump. They're just all. You have to hope that behind the scenes there's people that they're not so crazy and stupid and ignorant and just I have this. We have the dollar and we have the military, so we can do whatever we want.
Well, I think Mark Rubio is just a eunuch.
Yeah, maybe.
He's a Cuban eunuch.
To me, it just seems like they're just phoning it in, And it made me also think, not to get too philosophical, about Hegel's kind of master-slave dialectic,
Mhm.
that the master actually is kind of stupid, you know. So the less you have
There
to
is
do
that
things, the more
aspect.
you can phone it in. And then I'm comparing that to people, you know, like the head diplomat of China and Putin and that crew, and then what goes in Russia. I mean, and then that looking at China's state apparatus and statesmanship, and it just basically makes the United States and their sycophants or whatever, you know, the death wish Europe, just seem like they're scratching their ass and smelling it, you know, in comparison. So it's
Well, I
just a
think
very bizarre thing to see.
the U.S. collectively hasn't really sobered up from the whole end of history Kool-Aid.
Mm.
And it's just the reckoning with the fact that perhaps that wasn't the end of history, and that having a unipolar world order led by one world hegemon isn't the default. And China China's rise is really just its return to its rightful place in history. I mean, for most of history, it's been a regional power. I mean, hasn't really tried to take over the world the way the US has, but it's been for much of history, it's been like a very powerful in the region. It was like the Rome of East Asia, except it didn't really, well, even if it did collapse a few times, it always managed to rebuild itself.
Mhm.
You know, there was
Well,
always, yeah.
and there seemed to be, I mean, my Chinese history before World War II was quite, let's just say, gappy. But I do know that it never seemed to be like they're really big on incorporating territory. They actually seemed to be concerned about keeping certain things out, whether it be ideas or other groups or whatever.
Not
This kind
quite.
of back and forth of, you know, just that, no thanks, we're fine, you know.
Well, there was part of that, but part of it was because when China, like during the for example, like the Tang Dynasty or some of the like even the early Qing Dynasty, it was like they saw the outside world and was like, well, we don't have much to learn from them, and that was the Qing Dynasty's downfall, because there was too much complacency with China's advanced state that eventually Europeans caught up. They got better gunboats, and while the Qing Empire was using funds that should have been used to upgrade its military capacity, they were spending it on renovating the summer palace for the Empress Dowager, Cixi. So, I mean, difficult lessons
Well,
were
and they
learned.
had gunpowder first, yeah, but they didn't go around and be like, "Oh, let's put this to good use." I mean,
Well, they did create, contrary to popular belief, Chinese people did create guns. They just weren't as good as the guns that Europeans later made, and
but
didn't have
later,
good
you know.
gunboats. Yeah, there is that aspect. And I think it's just land empire versus Atlanticism, because you look at like the British Empire, it was a sort of Atlanticist naval empire, and there was this sort of thing where it's like, okay, we'll have colonies and we are like the center, but we don't want the cultures of the periphery to taint our our elite culture back home in Britain. Whereas China's land empire expansion, I mean, there was different elements of it. There were times when nomadic peoples took over, and then when they took over, they had to adopt the existing bureaucratic system, because when you don't have a written language or a system of governance that's tested and true, you just adopt ones that already exist. So that's part of China's expansion. And it was just like, you don't see China having like overseas colonies. It was just a gradual expansion from the Central Plains, and then later on to like the Tibetan Plateau, Xinjiang, and then the north, the northeast.
Greater
That's kind of,
China. Yeah.
yeah. And then the mentality was always, okay, we're in the center and we want to keep the culture of the periphery out. It was more of like a symbiotic relationship. Like we in the center will be influenced by the peripheries as the empire expands, and the periphery in turn also gets influenced by the center. So it's just a different logic. than
Well,
Atlanticism.
and I'm sure that somebody's probably written on this. I'm just not familiar with it. Like comparing, like if you just look at the kind of primordial soup for industrialization and capitalism to take off, why it happened where it did rather than other places when you had some of the things there, especially the cultural development. But I think it's so funny. I think Westerners, and I know some of us know this, but we're so used to when they engage in civilization versus barbarian binary understandings of history. They're so used to think of the West as the civilization and everything else in various stages of barbarity or catching up. And I think it's always funny when you can remind, like, well, actually, there was people coming over from West Asia who were hanging out around France and UK and thinking these people are kind of nasty. They're not very hygienic. And the same thing with China wasn't. It was like, which makes sense that every culture is you're gonna be the center of your cosmology. But this idea that for them, the barbarians were very much outside the gates, not inside. And they would look around and report back a thing like, yeah, we're fine, thanks.
Yeah, that's kind of what happened when the sailor Zheng He kind of made his little voyage. That Muslim eunuch, the Chinese Muslim eunuch guy, went around, on his big boats, and then was like, kind of like, okay, yeah, cool, but I think we got everything we need.
So they even were intersectional before the West.
Different. They were eunuchs for different reasons.
Chinese Muslim eunuch gender.
Well, it's more like the emperor cut your balls off. It wasn't really.
Yeah.
It was more straightforward. It's not like today where they package it up as like this fancy gender ideology, and then you voluntarily get chemically castrated. Back then it was simple. It was just.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start off here with some of the Trump tweets. Yeah, I had to do this. For those of you who don't know, this is a take on what was that Charlton Heston? The Ten Commandments? There's a Charlton Heston movie where Charlton Heston's playing Moses and Yul Brynner is Ramses. And there's a few scenes when he's trying to figure out what to do with Moses and the Hebrews. And he'll say, so let it be written, so let it be done. And so this is my Donald J. Ramsey's Trump meme. So let it be tweeted, so let it be done. Because sometimes it really seems that he thinks that he can manifest things via tweet and via statements, that totally divorced from material reality of what's possible and what's not possible in what time frame. And this kind of so here he is on September 5th, and I'm thinking he's probably jealous, yeah, because I think he wants to hang out with these dudes, and he's not there. But he tweets on Truth Social. Looks like we've lost India and Russia to deepest, darkest China. May they have a long and prosperous future together! ! Donald J. Trump. And I remember watching this, what Modi was posting, or whoever handles Modi's social media was posting when he was, after there's that tariff thing that started going on between India and China, India and the US. And then he's like hanging out with Vladimir Putin, and they're taking selfies together. And then, and Trump is kind of whinging. And I'm like, way to troll, Modi. But what do you think about this term, deepest, darkest China?
It's just the way Trump likes to speak. Crooked Hillary, Sleepy Joe, deepest, darkest China. But I mean,
Anyway.
Yeah, he is not pleased that India, which is seen as a very reliable ally of the U.S., the biggest democracy in the world, is cozying it up with, two countries that are at the forefront of challenging U.S. hegemony.
Yeah. And the dying hegemon is not taking it very well. I think they're thrashing around between anger and, again, denial and bargaining.
At the same time, though, I think you can't take what Trump says at face value, because he has this whole thing like, when he tries to negotiate with China, sometimes he'll say things like, "Oh, we're gonna have like this like ridiculous like 110% tariff rate or whatever," and his strategy is really, I feel, say outrageous things, get people's attention, and then get China to come to the negotiating table, and then walk away with a new deal, because it seemed like an attempt at recalibrating the terms of trade. Now, whether or not it was good remains to be seen, but he did accomplish the goal of that, to his credit, and it was done in a way where I think
So Trump won. What did Trump get?
no.
What did Trump get from so far his tariff?
Well,
Just materially.
The desire to recalibrate the terms of trade, that was done, but whether or not it was favorable to the U.S. remains to be seen. I don't think it was, but
now my thing is in terms of what you want and what you can do. Is this like when he told Zelensky performatively now, like, you have no cards? It's like, I wouldn't say, of course, that the U.S. doesn't have any cards, but I think that they believe their own bullshit to a certain extent. This idea that still this belief that China, that they can hurt China economically more than China can hurt them, or that China is so dependent on the U.S. and the trade with the U.S. is so important that, of course, they'll negotiate in terms that are more to the liking of Trump's finance capital buddies and real estate buddies and whatnot. That was what I was kind of like getting at it. But I understand the tactic of just kind of like throwing stuff out there and trying to be keep people on the back foot and make outrageous things, and then come away with something. Anything he comes away with, of course, like any politician or business person, is gonna tout as a victory, especially for the base. But then it's the time thing, because a lot of these things take time to, like you said, let's see what happens. It's not like you can, the markets react right away. Yeah, which makes me also think, I wonder if there's insider trading going on. The people who know that Trump is about ready to tweet something crazy, so you know what to short or what the opposite. Yeah, to what stocks to short or go long on, and whatnot. But here is another one, because I want to talk about the military parade first, about what you think that was communicating.
Oh, I got a lot to say about that.
Yeah. And maybe you know more about some of the weapons that they were displaying, obviously not just for their own people, but for the all the people who are watching as well. But here's another interesting Trump tweet about, again, in reference to this 80th Victory Day parade. And before that, there was some meeting in was it Tianjin?
Xinjiang?
Xinjiang. Thank you. So Trump, I'll try to do his accent. Yeah, I'm not very good. The big question to be answered is whether or not President Xi...
I do it better. Let me do it.
Okay, do it. You do it. Yeah.
The big question to be answered is whether or not President Xi of China will mention the massive amount of support and blood that the United States of America gave to China in order to help it secure its freedom from a very unfriendly foreign invader. Many Americans died in China's quest for victory and glory. I hope they are rightfully honored and remembered for their bravery and sacrifice. May President Xi and the wonderful people of China have a great and lasting day of celebration. Please give my warmest regards to Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un as you conspire against the United States of America.
Yeah. So I saw that and I was thinking, okay, so not only did the United States defeat fascism in Europe, not only did we do all that, not only did we do all the heavy lifting on that, don't you know? But also, I was not aware that we also liberated China.
Although
the communists. I mean, that's pretty cool.
Well, 1945, the KMT and the communists were in an in an alliance, and the
Okay.
U.S. did send support. There were like the volunteer like there were like volunteers and support especially in the Air Force.
Hmm.
Yeah, because you could see those little patches that they have on the back of their the
Yeah,
little
no, I'm
jackets with
aware of
the,
that,
yeah.
but again, this idea like that tipped the balance, like but
Oh,
for that, you know, and also it's just, of course, the hypocrisy shouldn't surprise me, but they can have all their Victory Day in Europe celebrations and not invite Russia at all when the Soviet Union is the country that
did
inflicted
a
the
lot of the
most
heavy lifting.
damage,
Yeah,
on Nazi Germany, and also lost the most people. I don't know, was it 14 million, 20 million? I mean, I don't know.
except the number I think is 27 million.
Okay.
Different
But
ways to
they don't
count
get
it.
invited. No. France does, because France, as always, really really held its own against the Fuhrer and his people, the Fuhrer and his fury. But I just saw this and I thought, okay, I wonder who told him that factoid. He did not know this before he wrote this tweet. I'm quite sure about the people who that some of the Americans that helped that were fighting in China with the Chinese at that time. But also, I was just thinking he's just jealous. Yeah, like he used to be hanging out. He was supposed to be the one having good relations with Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un, of course, for the benefit of the people. They would know their place, of course. They would know that they're the supplicant in that situation, his mind and the Western's mind. But I just thought, oh, he's just kind of jealous, yo. But as you conspire against the United States of America, I mean, it's kind of like an accusation, and like what? Like the United States doesn't quote unquote conspire to have things in the world go towards their economic and political interests. I mean, it's the most amazing thing. Things that they do all the time, and this is common for countries and powers to do. Somehow, when it involves China or in Russia, it's nefarious. Ooh, these leaders got together. They must be conspiring against the United States. Like what? Foreign relations? Diplomatic relations? I don't know. But so on that note, let's get to what to make of. Let me pull this down here. What was being communicated from China through that military parade? Not just obviously the aesthetic of it all. I mean, they really can plan a parade, but in terms of the weapons.
Well, besides the weapons, I think the message of the parade was best summarized. I don't know if you remember this part, but there was a part where there were 3 helicopters, each flying banners. It was written in Chinese, and the banners read one of them says 和平必胜, the second one is 正义必胜, and the third one is 人民必胜, which means peace must prevail, justice must prevail, and the people must prevail. Or you can translate it as peace will prevail, justice will prevail, and the people will prevail. And I think I'm saying this in 80 years after the defeat of Japan is the purpose is twofold. One is to further establish China's participation in the discourse surrounding World War II while commemorating the veterans and martyrs who fought like I said, 8 to 14 years of resistance against the Japanese. 14 years if you start counting from 1931 after the Mukden incident on September 18th, and when the Japanese took over what is now the city of Shenyang, or 8 years if you start counting the time when the KMT and the CPC began their alliance. Now, you'll find that from the Chinese, I also just wanted to take this opportunity to speak. You'll find that from the Chinese perspective, there's no longer much arguing over who played the bigger role in the resistance, the communists or the KMT, because the reality was the KMT was a conventional army and the ruling government, while the communists were guerrillas. So both sides had different roles to play. In some instances, one was auxiliary to the other and vice versa. But both had the common goal of defeating the Japanese. And I do want to respond to one of the viewers of Al Qaeda who said Chiang Kai-shek was more interested in fighting the communists than the Japs. The U.S. gave up on him. The U.S. did not give up on Chiang Kai-shek during the War of Resistance against Japan. They gave up on him after the war when all of the cards were in his favor, and he still started losing to the communists. Now, there was a point when he thought that destroying the communists within China was a necessary prerequisite to defeat the Japanese. But by the time, even before Marshal Zhang Xueliang kidnapped Chiang Kai-shek and forced him to enter an alliance with the communists, you look at declassified documents now, there is evidence that internally within the KMT, this was already being debated. So, I mean, the fact of the matter is, the Chinese people coming together to defeat the Japanese successfully marked the beginning to the end of the century of humiliation, right? And this is what China is trying to affirm and make better known worldwide, because you're on mute.
I should just let the sirens play. Can you say a bit about that, the century of humiliation, for those who might not be aware of what that means for China, what China means by that?
Oh, so I mean, after the Opium War, when the British forced China into a bunch of unequal treaties, and the attack on Beijing by the Eight Nation Alliance, China basically became it wasn't formally colonized by these countries, but they all carved out spheres of influence. And so it entered a stage where a lot of the country was still kind of feudal, and then all of a sudden there was also this kind of quasi-colonial relationship between China and the rest of the world. And for much of history, China was on top, and now all of a sudden it was called the sick man of Asia. And it was just not a very dignified time in Chinese people's in the history of China. And we look back at it as difficult lessons were learned. We don't really look at it to feel bad about ourselves or anything, but it's this is what happens when you're weak, right? And we must never let it happen again. So we need to be in a position where people don't mess with us, foreign powers don't mess with us and take advantage of us the way that we did. And I think part of that comes with reaffirming China's historical perspective. I mean, like you said, many of us learning about World War II, how many people in the West understand the extent of China's participation?
Yeah.
It's China's a side character, right?
But
I mean, for 14 years, China was holding down the imperial forces and imperial Japanese forces, and had it not been for that, I don't think the MacArthur's island hopping campaign would have gone that smoothly. I mean, from 1931, when the Mukden incident happened, to 1941, China did not have much allied support, well, except for some support from the Soviet Union, because the Soviets thought if China falls, then the Soviet Union might be next. So they had an interest in making sure the Chinese were resisting the Japanese. And the fact that China...
that makes sense, actually. I hadn't thought about that before. Again, I should also admit that my World War II and pre-World War II military knowledge is, let's just say, has its gaps. But it makes sense that the more that Japan was bogged down in the more that Japan was bogged down in China, the more efficient that's of course was good for the U.S. in the Asia Pacific sphere of that battle. Yeah. Because they didn't have as many forces to block MacArthur and all that from.
By 1941, 80% of the Japanese army had already been pinned down in China by Chinese forces. 80%. So MacArthur was fighting 20%. Now, even then, it wasn't an easy battle. Battles like the Iwo Jima and stuff like that. It was very brutal. Now imagine you had 5 times the manpower on the Japanese side. Would it have gone that smoothly? Is my question. Yeah. Now,
which again, not to get sidetracked, but it makes the decision to bomb Pearl Harbor even seem. It's like the Japanese decision to bomb Pearl Harbor and the Nazis' decision to try to take over Russia. I mean, both those. I'm sure. Again, a lot of people have written about that. But anyway, yeah. Okay, so to go back, so in terms of the psyche or the Japanese, Chinese kind of collective identity or psyche. What this parade, the resonance. Let's first finish what you want to say about the resonance within China, and then we'll move on to what it communicates to China's in terms of what it communicated geopolitically.
Right. So I mean, I think it's just looking back. It's like, hey, despite all of I think one thing I want to talk about is Chinese culture is fundamentally very different from like the Western leftist culture, where it's like victimhood is elevated and celebrated. Like Chinese people don't like to be considered victims. So when we speak of the century of humiliation, it's not for the whole world to like pity us and feel bad about us. It's more like this was a difficult time. It sucked. But we overcame it, and we must never let it happen again. So, I mean, 80 years.
Which is why when I invited you on the show, or when we show started, I didn't say let's have a moment of silence to acknowledge the pain and suffering, the long pain and suffering of the Chinese masses.
Yeah.
So
I mean, 80
I think that's a
years,
great point.
It's like a celebration of overcoming unimaginable difficulties and embarking on the road to, civilizational rejuvenation. And it's also a reminder to the rest of the world that China is ready to overcome whatever challenge it encounters the way it did 80 years ago. And 80 years ago, that challenge was far more difficult than anything China's ever going to face today. I mean, you just look at the difference of strength between Chinese forces and the rest of the world's, like Japan's. And China, what it has today wasn't just like, it didn't just fall from the sky. It was 80 years of hard work, and the Chinese people intend to maintain the fruits of the collective labor of the people ever since the War of Resistance. And I think on this reminder at this point in time is very pertinent, because you have the collective West, like you said, viewing China as an inherent threat to the post-Cold War world order led by U.S. hegemony, for simply the crime of building itself up, and through its success challenge the idea that the world ought to be dominated by a single country. So, this also comes a few years after the U.S. tried to create inconveniences for China, like the its involvement in the 2019 Hong Kong riots, or like recently, well, not recently, it's been happening for decades, but like using the administration of the Taiwan region as a way, in an attempt to drive a wedge between Chinese people on both sides of the strait, in an attempt to get the administration here to step on red lines and provoke responses in kind from the Chinese mainland. And I must say the Taiwan issue is especially important for the Chinese people, not just because of modern Cold War era politics, but because Taiwan was a Japanese colony for 50 years, from 1895 to 1945, because China was so weak that it could not defend itself. It could not defend itself against Japanese aggression during the First Sino-Japanese War, which was fought from 1894 to 1895. So Taiwan's return to China in 1945 was also another important milestone in ending the century of humiliation. So the fact that now you have outside forces again trying to, use Taiwan to mess with the rest of China, it doesn't bode well for the people of China, because you look at history, that's exactly what was done in the past. Now today, people will say, oh yeah, but it's a separate. No, it's not a separate country. According to the laws on both sides, it's an internal division to be settled by the people of China on both sides of the strait. So.
Well, and divide and conquer is a long, the United States and the West didn't invent that, although they're quite good at it.
Yeah.
And
to
also
summarize though,
these little, they want these little imperial outpost colonies. I don't know. My guess is you're not gonna that Taiwan doesn't have the content to turn into some crazy Israel on the edge of.
It doesn't.
On the edge of China. I mean, I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I'm not saying you guys, can't get your warrior stuff on, but I just don't see that happening.
Oh, here's the thing: the people of Taiwan who have the balls to do that sort of stuff were all killed by the Japanese. And then the next wave of people who had the balls to resist were kind of killed off by the KMT during White Terror. So, and most people in Taiwan, believe it or not, are pretty pragmatic. Like, most people don't think about these things. Like, they're not driven by ideology. They want the same thing that everyone else in the world wants, which is a better future for their families. And Taipei's relationship with Washington isn't like that between like Tel Aviv and Washington. Like Tel Aviv gets a lot of money from Washington. Taipei pays a lot of tax dollars from the people of Taiwan to the U.S. and to support the U.S. military industrial complex and to give kickbacks for politicians. I mean, nearly all of the weapons delivered over here are overpriced and outdated and paid for by tax dollars of Taiwan. Only one exception during the Biden years when he decided to pass that little military bill and gave like free weapons. But that was like the exception rather than the rule. Most of the time, it's the people over here being strong-armed into buying weapons. So to summarize the whole meaning of the parade, it's a celebration of China's victory over Japan as a symbol and reminder to the world of China's determination to defend its sovereignty, and that it was also a demonstration of its ability and will to defend its sovereignty and deter acts of hostility coming from, the U.S. like within the Asia Pacific region.
Well, and I'm happy to know that there's enough that it'd be really difficult for politicians in Taiwan to start acting like politicians across Europe and being like, "Hey, Taiwan, let's turn ourselves into a Ukraine. Let's open up let's become the terrain of a proxy war between the West or the United States and mainland China." I mean,
DPP.
Who wants that heat?
Well, the DPP, the ruling party, the Democratic Progressive Party, was kind of like on that path, and it's made them very unpopular. Like, yeah, the only reason they were able to win in 2024 was because the opposition against them was split. But now the opposition's like coming together, like in this sort of united front against the ruling Democratic Progressive Party. So we'll see how things go next year, and in 2028 next year is the mayoral elections. If the DPP loses its last strongholds Tainan City and Kaohsiung City, then it's a very important turning point. And the KMT also recently got a new chairwoman who's she's already being smeared as being paid for by the CPC, which kind of makes her seem pretty legit in my eyes. And interestingly, this woman used to be part of the DPP back when it was more of a big tent party and not explicitly really a separatist party. She's been in the KMT for like 20 years, and she represents the younger faction that's more about pragmatism and better relations with the mainland, as opposed to like the KMT elites that are just kind of like born into party royalty because of, for example, like, I don't want to get too sidetracked, but you have other figures.
Yeah, well, again, check out the video we did when we did a deep dive into Taiwan.
Subscribe to my channel, Straight Talk with Xiangyu. I have like random ass episodes about all sort of esoteric topics.
Oh, now I felt bad because I did. Let me get this up here. I have a little bio card on you, and then I saw that, but I took it out because I looked at it. I didn't see anything on it for a while, and I thought maybe it was defunct. But next time I'll leave it on there, your channel. But I see that you have the thing there, because I wasn't sure if you were still doing
the Twitter account is kind of defunct because most people just follow my main like YouTube account. I just kind of made that Twitter account so no one else can take it.
There you go. Well, yes, do follow his things. And I will add the more precise details in the video description later on. Okay, so now to the extent you can, what this military parade communicates to the outside world, in particular those I'm assuming their main audience, would be the United States and the West, more broadly. And I'm guessing that if I was going to be putting together a military parade and I had to decide which weapons we were going to parade down the Tiananmen Square, my guess would be there'd be two things about reach, like how far they can go, and also the technology in terms of is the West up to snuff in terms of taking out these missiles. I know that there was a lot of talk about Iran having what they call them hypersonic or supersonic or something like that, having developed missiles that can't be very easily tracked and shot down. And that's why they were able to hit targets in Israel, but we're talking about China now. So do you have anything about that, about the kind of weapons, about them also highlighting their technological capacity, what kind of weapons that they're able to produce
Main
at
ones,
scale?
main ones I would say are it's what we call the nuclear triad. So you have the nuclear capable Dongfeng 61. Dongfeng, it's an ICBM, international intercontinental ballistic missile,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I don't know what these are, but I thought they would be like these are missile launchers, yeah, like mobile missile launchers.
Yeah,
They looked
and
bad.
and then
Bad in a bad
there
way, like a cool way.
then there's the Julang 3, or the what in English you just call it the JL3. It's a
Mhm.
nuclear capable submarine launched ICBM. So it's a submarine anywhere in the ocean. They can launch an ICBM and basically hit the US from anywhere in the oceans. And then there is the Jinglei 1, or I guess in English you just call it the JL1, which is a nuclear capable air launched ballistics missile. So Dongfeng, yeah, from ground, from the waters, and from the air, it's capable of launching nuclear weapons. And these are the latest generations. They were all unveiled at this military parade. And I know all these names sound like a bunch of ching chong in English, but I just wanted to give more context in the symbolism. Dongfeng means like the east wind, right? It's like,
Okay.
the
East wind.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah, yeah.
Nice.
And then the naval one, the Julang 3, Julang means like the great wave or the big wave, the giant wave. And Jinglei is like a thunderclap, because Jinglei, the JL1 is the air launched ballistics missile, right? So it's
Yeah.
kind of so that's like the coverage. And then you also have the demonstration of, I don't have the names of the equipment off the top of my head, but they demonstrated various weapons and just equipment that they have, which are highlight their area denial capabilities within the Taiwan Strait, as well as the First Island chain. So, and that's significant because I guess the Cold War strategy the U.S. employed against China was to have the First Island chain, which is a bunch of countries or territories that are friendly with the U.S. that surround China, from the Aleutian Islands up north down to Japan, the main islands of Japan, down to Okinawa, Taiwan Island, the northern Philippines, all the way down through the South China Sea, Southeast Asia. And the area deniable capabilities means China's getting to the point where it's getting closer to being able to just deny access within the entire First Island chain to the US. So it's like, well, in that case, if the US wanted to provoke a war with China over China's Taiwan, then it's not going to be able to ship supplies and weapons to Taiwan during such a conflict. And if you look at the joint sword military drills that the PLA launched against the Taiwan area in response to Lai Ching-de's careless remarks, there are drills to practice enforcing a blockade around the entire island, which tells me in the event where they decide peaceful reunification is no longer feasible and they really need to take care of the situation right now, a blockade is the primary tactic they're going to employ. And if you look at Chinese history, this isn't the first time that it's been used to bring Taiwan back into the central authorities' control within China. You look at the Qing dynasty. When the Qing dynasty was founded, remnants of the Ming dynasty also ended up setting up shop in Taiwan. You had Zheng Chenggong, or they call it in the West Guoxinga. Yeah, he had this little Ming rump state in Taiwan that lasted a few generations until his grandkids capitulated to the new Qing Empire, and that was done by enforcing a blockade around the island. What they did was they captured Penghu, and then from there they prevented supplies from being able to enter Taiwan. And then as the people started running out of supplies, there was pressure to capitulate, and that's exactly what happened. So it's I think this part geopolitically, it's meant for the authorities of Taiwan, but also to the US, which is please reevaluate your strategy in the Asia Pacific. You can no longer use Taiwan as a bargaining chip against us, because Taiwan, under international law, is our territory. And even if you want to contest it, you can't, because your military capabilities, aren't a match for our area denial capabilities. Like, China doesn't need to.
But basically, their way of saying nicely, like, you don't want this heat.
Yeah. You don't want this heat. We don't want it either.
We don't want it, and you don't want it. Or please try, or please. I mean, they may want it. They don't care if they're not having to fight or die for it, and they can make a lot of money either from destruction or production. But
I want to respond to a comment.
Go ahead.
How China has a mutual defense treaty with North Korea, which people forget to mention.
Oh, that's great. Let's tie that back, because one of the things I forgot I wanted to ask you about, you had any insights on. There's been rumbles about between they don't air it out in public too much, but the Xi Jinping or the Chinese and isn't always happy about North Korea. What North Korea does. But I noticed that in this parade, Kim Jong-un was front and center, walking side by side by Xi Jinping and Putin. So if you wanted to say what that indicates.
I'll talk about this and also respond to address Lester's bananas comment. The China, Russia, and North Korea all have one thing in common, which is China is China first, Russia is Russia first, and North Korea is Korea first. And even though a lot of times their interests intersect and align with one another, there's going to be conflicts of interest just between any two countries, right? Whether it be trade or whatever. For a while, China wasn't too happy with North Korea's nuclear development, because China also has business interests with Japan and South Korea, and they saw that as destabilizing. But the thing is, once those capabilities were reached, it's like, okay, it's just something you got to deal with. And from North Korea's perspective, them developing those capabilities makes a lot of sense, right? So I mean, I can understand why both sides have sort of conflicts of interest. Now Marshal Kim Jong-un's attendance in the Beijing thing, I think it sends a message. I think for a while, because China was North Korea's primary trade partner, and China is China first, and North Korea is Korea first. I guess for a while, maybe perhaps the DPRK felt that they can't put all of their eggs in one basket. They need to diversify more. And when the Russia-Ukraine conflict arose, that was their opportunity to make weapons, to make money by selling weapons and sending their soldiers to participate in the war. And from that, they got, I think they got paid quite a lot. You look at the latest developments in Pyongyang. You have the new Hwasong district in Pyongyang. Very nice. Where did they get the money from? Because tourism's been closed ever since the start of COVID. They reopened tourism only for Russian guests, and earlier this year, tourism from other countries briefly reopened in the special economic zone of Rasan, but then they got shut down weeks later. And then there was that marathon in, I think, May, but that wasn't tourism. That was the visas were handed out by the sporting authorities, and the people who joined those tours, they went technically as athletes. Even the amateurs went in as athletes. And now,
well, I think that there is this idea in the West that China, that North Korea can't really do anything, and North Korea would have folded, would have collapsed decades ago, if not for China sending food, doing this. So there's this idea that there's this very kind of
China doesn't give the stuff for free,
almost like colonial kind of like, or I guess patrimonial, or a patronage relationship between China and North Korea. I think some people have that.
Not really. You go to Dandong, the city of Dandong. It's right on the border of China, and on the other side is Korea's Siniju. You look at the cargo trains and trucks that go back and forth every day. It's not just one direction; it's two. Yes, China does sell the Koreans food and all that stuff, but China gets minerals and those
Mm.
things in return. It's trade. It's not just
Well,
like,
yeah, the
China.
reason why I mentioned it is not because I thought it was true, but because
Yeah.
that might have been the reason why
Also,
China's like, look, China, look, like you're Korea first, I'm China first, but anytime you do anything, we also get heat. You know,
there's that
somehow
aspect,
we
but
can
there's
just call
also,
you up and be like, hey, man,
well,
stop
okay,
it.
but at the same time, you have to realize that in a way, Korea has China by the balls,
Okay. How
because
so?
you look at history, how Korea falls, China gets fucked.
Mm,
The first Sino-Japanese War, people think Sino-Japanese, that means between China and Japan. Yes, but where was most of it fought? Most of it was fought in Korea and in the Yellow Sea, over influence in Korea, because at that time China was a suzerain of Korea. Korea was a vassal state. Japan wanted to turn Korea into its colony, so it needed to erode Chinese influence in the region, right? Korean War, the MacArthur had many ideas about what to do with China, and the idea was to use Korea as a land bridge to, enter and dominate China. So China is not interested in seeing the DPRK fold or collapse. So there is an incentive to make sure that their sovereignty is defended. Right.
Well, it makes sense. There's a reason why the United States would be quite concerned about what was going on in Mexico, and not just because of the immigration that goes through there, but other things, because that's they're right on the border, a big border.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
I mean, and all, with all intents and purposes, I mean, I'm not saying that the DPRK is merely a buffer zone. It's not, but it does, for better or worse, it does serve as a geopolitical buffer between China and the U.S. forces stationed in South Korea. The last thing China wants is U.S. Military bases right along the Yalu River. So there's a lot of interests at play, and at the same time, I think the DPRK was also sending this message to both Xi Jinping and Putin. The message that they sent to President Xi in its more recent friendlier relations with Russia is, hey, I'm not your simp, I got options, right? Fair. I think this sort of posturing makes sure it ensures that you're treated with more respect. And the Marshal Kim Jong-un's participation in the military parade was also a message to Putin saying, hey, we're friends, but I got other options. I still maintain decent relations with President Xi. And yeah, so I think it's just, if you want to call it the three of them conspiring against U.S. interest,
You'd be
perhaps
stupid not to. I mean,
Well, yeah, and the other is maybe it's not conspiring for the. It's just the three of them trying to maximize all of their personal interests, which happens to be against U.S. geopolitical interests, because the U.S. geopolitical interest is to make sure that these three countries remain weak.
Well, and I think it's just the turnaround that, again, they're not able to, or it seems like they're not able to process that other people have ideas and interests and capacities as well. That it's like, that it's like, oh, we can triangulate all we want, but you shouldn't. Oh, look at them over there triangulating. That's oh my God, again, this casting stuff that they do all the time, or that's just kind of pragmatic to do, and it's very kind of nefarious, insidious light. It's like, well, if you're threatened by countries getting along, maybe you should think about what that means.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's also significant that this year it was Marshal Kim Jong-un that went, because the last time there was one of these 10-year, like, I think it's 70th anniversary, it was Park Geun-hye, the then South Korean president and daughter of Park Chung-hee, that attended the military parade. And yeah, and this year it's the leadership from the DPRK. So I don't know, make of that what you will.
And to wrap up the military part of it, because of course the United States, we mentioned this before, they sell a lot of weapons around the world, both good ones and old ones. That if you want to show your support for the hegemon, you got to buy our old, like, army surplus stuff. I guess. So the money goes back to circulates nicely in that fashion. But I don't know who does in terms of who does China sell, like would China sell something like this to some other country?
Maybe not the latest stuff, but I mean,
and also, can you imagine something in China? Because so far they seem very hesitant to get involved in any kind of military action. Yeah, so they condemn things. It's quite clear where China stands if it's between Iran and Israel, and Israel, Palestine, Venezuela, this type of stuff. It's quite clear what they stand on, but I can't imagine them ever getting to the point where we condemn this and we're going to send some of our nice military equipment to Venezuela or to Russia or to Palestine. Can you imagine?
I mean,
or Iran.
You look at the conflict between Pakistan and India. It was Chinese weapons. It was Chinese weapons against American weapons.
Okay.
So there are sales, but it's not like to the extent of like the U.S. military industrial complex, which is not simply a matter of selling weapons, but it's a matter of strong arming various countries into purchasing overpriced and outdated weapons for the benefit of the U.S. military industrial complex, and to pay kickbacks to politicians like Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, and I think another thing in terms of the cultural and historic, I guess, for lack of a better word, Chinese identity, idea of this 80th anniversary and being able to reflect back on what they've been able to accomplish over the last 80 years.
Right.
We covered that. We covered them being, look, it's like, for all those people who actually think they might seriously try to start a hot war over Taiwan or based on Taiwan, we're prepared to, you might want to consider what our capacities are,
right?
And that as well, and then also their industrial capacity, because I know there's been talk lately, not on the mainstream media, about how the military industrial complex, so to speak, their shelves are getting kind of depleted because of what's been sent or sold to Ukraine and what's been provided to Israel. The idea that if something were to kick off, especially multiple fronts, like a hot war, not just proxies, that the U.S. would be kind of up shit's creek, because both China and Russia, and I'm thinking also Iran, have the industrial capacity to produce the armaments in a way that the United States would be hard pressed to kick into gear. Yeah.
There is that factor. By the way, I think this particular picture is from the 2019 military parade celebrating the 70th anniversary of the PRC's founding.
Oh, is it? Yeah. Okay. Well, damn you, Google.
Yeah, this one's from this year.
It's like,
because I was looking at the other one. I was like, oh, that's a big 70.
China military parade. I might not have put the specific date. Okay. This one is it. This is 2025.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you got those little peace doves.
And so it's this another thing about, again, the living in the real world versus this kind of denial and bargaining, especially as exhibited by at least the public statements that are coming out of the U.S. administration and that are parroted to the mainstream press, is that even if you can, that you have to be able that. Even if you have a lot of money or can raise a lot of money to buy stuff, there has to be stuff for you to buy. Yeah. So, I mean, and again, this idea about, when I think about with Europe agreeing to, start buying more and more weapons from the U.S. and Trump saying basically like, well, whatever, we'll keep on selling weapons to NATO or to that can end up being sent to Ukraine, but it's also it's implying that those weapons are just there ready to be sold and shipped.
That's the power of media, because it's not mentioned, but I think it's widely understood over here in Taiwan, because every year when we're strong-armed into buying weapons, you pay billions, but then like the weapons don't arrive until many years after the fact. So, I mean, it's kind of
an interesting way to give tribute. Yeah, it's like they come around.
That's exactly what it is.
You got a way to give tribute, and it's like, okay, well, we're not giving tribute. We're buying these weapons. And maybe we'll get some, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Maybe they're still obsolete, but whatever.
Yep.
You know, I mean, it's just kind of money laundering in a way, but
And it is, and the thing is, people need to understand when you stand up and show a backbone, leaders like Trump will actually respect you more and treat you a little bit more like an equal. And he might not be
Mhm.
happy about it, but whereas like the administration over here in Taiwan, especially right now, is that there's a difference between the DPP and the KMT. Say all you want about the KMT, I mean, they failed in many ways, but when they negotiate with Americans, it's more like, okay, we'll give you what you want, but what are you going to give us in return, right?
Mhm.
Whereas the DPP is more like, okay, we'll give you what you want. Now, please like us, and
Yeah.
please be our friends.
Mhm.
Because I mean, the KMT's like, ever since the end, for many decades, it's been screwed over by America so many times. It knows
Mhm.
that America is not really its friend, and that they were in a relationship where they both just had uses for one another. Whereas the
Mhm.
DPP still has this fantasy of the US being like our ideological partner who ready to
Mhm.
defend our values of freedom and
Mhm.
democracy and all that.
Well, you
And
have a similar thing, I think, with Iran, thinking that there's still factions or parts of Iran that think, well, they'll leave us alone at some point, you know.
yeah,
And it doesn't matter. It's like, no, they're never going to leave you alone.
it goes to
It's like
show that politics.
listening to Kissinger. You know, the U.S. has interests, friends, allies shift, but this idea, like, well, if we just really, really promise extra hard and show and open and really prove over and over again that we're not interested in building a nuclear weapon, that somehow Israel will drop this bone and they'll leave us be. And it's
that's
like,
just the
how
most
many
naive.
times do they have to tell you that no?
That's just a very naive way of thinking. It's wishful thinking, because I think
Mhm.
at the end of the day, politics isn't about your feelings. It's about material reality. It's about conflicts of interest and balances of power. And when it comes to these sorts of things like military capacity or industrial capacity, there are objective metrics like, what is this missile capable of doing? How can it avoid being detected and intercepted? What is this air defense system capable of? Or like, what is your industrial capacity capable of doing? What kind of money do you have? Is your economy based on manufacturing and doing like real
Mhm.
actual construction, or is it just a bunch of rich people on Wall Street treating the economy like a giant
Mhm.
casino? All of these
Mhm.
things are very objective, and the policymakers of all these countries that go through economic, military, like foreign policy, whatever, they take all of these things into consideration. It's just a
Mhm.
bunch of political junkies online that are a little bit too naive for their own good, but like
Mhm.
to run their mouths regardless. And I'm saying this
Mhm.
applies to a bunch of pro-China Westerners and just internet Western anti-communists or
Mhm.
anti-imperialists. They're just as guilty as like the many of
Mhm.
those like anti-communists, like the neoliberal
Mhm.
um running dogs of empire. They're all guilty of this stuff, which is they think about politics with their feels and not just looking at the objective reality and
Mhm.
analyzing who benefits from what are the
Mhm.
power balances. I mean, look at, for example, I just mentioned the Taiwan question because it's where I am. It's not determined by
Mhm.
the good feelings of whoever. It's the balance
Mhm.
of power between Beijing and Washington. That's
Mhm.
all there is. That's all there is to
Yeah,
it.
and it's like you can tweet and say all kinds of things you want. It doesn't actually, it doesn't mean that the reality quickly shapes to match that tweet or that wish. It's same thing I was thinking with this non-peace deal between Israel and Palestine that Trump's touting. And immediately both the naysayers and the people want to be like, oh, peace prize president, this and that, and the naysayers saying, oh, this is terrible, this is over, and again, just focusing on the immediate gut reaction and not being like, well, uh, let's step back a bit. Let's see what materially seems to be going on, and what they can do in the speed and the tempo of that, rather than just being like, oh my god, this is over. Or the people when again, it was the same thing on people we would probably be politically, ideologically aligned with when Iran ended what they're calling now the 12-day war. They agreed to stop, when that stopped, and then people were like, "Oh, this is it. Iran's done. The resistance is over. It's just going to be another Balfour Agreement. The West and the joke states, the Gulf states are just going to carve up the Middle East, and Greater Israel is going to become a reality, and that's it." And I get the feeling, because it was enjoyable. Unfortunately, we're at that point when I would feel happiness when I would hear that an Iranian missile reached Tel Aviv. Usually, I don't like feeling glad when places are bombed, but when you watch so many years of genocide, it gets to you. But what I wanted to say, let's shift now to the economics of it. So the tariffs, Trump's tariffs, and China's. Again, to my mind, an example of how Trump in the West is kind of, they're going left and right, and it's all this braggadocio and threats and whatnot. Whereas it seems you get the idea that that China has people that is planning and has contingency plans, and then is just executing. If this, then we do this. Again, those communists say all those people who are naysayers about planning, it can come in handy. And so
Yeah.
I'm going to see what you're private chatting me of. Okay, sure. So this is the last. What we want to get to the. Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. Export controls. So
Right.
so what happened was, again, there was the tariffs, the Trump tariffs on China, and then China came out and said, well, we're going to implement what they're calling export controls over rare earth metals and some other things that they find for their, they're going to put a limit on what they're going to sell to external markets. And Trump had this to say. I don't know can you see this, or shall I?
Yeah, I
read
can
it?
see it.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Do the Trump.
Some very strange things are happening in China. They are becoming very hostile and sending letters to countries throughout the world that they want to impose export controls on each and every element of production having to do with rare earths.
He has weird capitalization patterns, by the way.
Mhm.
And virtually anything else they can think of, even if it's not manufactured in China. Nobody has ever seen anything like this, but essentially it would clog the markets and make life difficult for virtually every country in the world, especially for China. We have been contacted by other countries who are extremely angry at this great trade hostility, which came out of nowhere. Our relationship with China over the past 6 months has been a very good one, thereby making this move on trade an even more surprising one. I have always felt that they've been lying in wait, and now, as usual, I have been proven right. There is no way that China should be allowed to hold the world captive, but that seems to have been their plan for quite some time, starting with the magnets and other elements that they have quietly amassed into somewhere of a monopoly position.
This kind of hurts my throat. Can you read the rest of it?
Yeah. Okay. So, but the U.S. has monopoly positions also, much stronger and more far-reaching than China's. I have just not chosen to use them. There was never a reason for me to do so until now. The letter they sent is many pages long and details with great specificity. Each and every element they want to withhold from other nations. Things that were routine are no longer routine at all. I have not spoken to President Xi because there was no reason to do so. This was a real surprise, not only to me, but to all the leaders of the free world. Oh my God. I was to meet President Xi in 2 weeks at APEC in South Korea, but now there seems to be no reason to do so. The Chinese letters were especially inappropriate in that this was the day that after 3,000 years of bedlam and fighting, there is peace in the Middle East. I wonder if that timing was coincidental, dependent on what China says about the hostile order they have just put out, I will be forced as president of the United States of America to financially counter their move. For every element that they have been able to monopolize, we have too. I never thought it would come to this, but perhaps all things, the time has come. Perhaps as with all things, the time has come. Ultimately, though, potentially painful it will be, it is a good thing in the end for the United States. One of the policies that we are calculating at this moment is a massive increase of tariffs on Chinese products coming into the United States of America. There are many other countermeasures that are likewise under serious consideration. Thank you for the attention to this matter. Again, this is what makes me think that everybody around him doesn't want to challenge any weird idea he has. Could he have been this surprised? And again, it's just like, how dare you do things how dare you do things that we don't like? And how dare you respond? Because basically what I see them with China doing these export controls, it's just basically like saying, like, you want to tariff us? We're going to decide what you get to tariff. We're going to decide what we want to trade or going to allow to trade to you. And again, it's just like, you have to give, it's like chef's kiss, because I'm thinking, it's like sting like float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, So they're just waiting, they're waiting. Like, well, let's do this. We see that the United States, all the growth in the economy has come from the so-called AI sector. Well, guess what you need for that? You need a lot of these rare earth metals. Oh, you want to bump up the militarized talk? Well, guess what you need for that? For a lot of the military equipment that you build in the States, you also need stuff from the markets that China has this ability to put what they're calling export controls on. So check fucking mate. I thought it was so fantastic, and I'm not happy that people are going to be economically harmed because of this. But just in terms of, again, it's just, I don't know if it's hubris or if it's stupidity or people don't want to tell them things. But it's like, duh. Is there no planning there? Again, this is the idea that they've been de-skilled after the end of the Cold War. Does nobody think, okay, if we do this, they may do this, and if this happens, then they might do this? Or they just think that we're just the cock on the walk, we can say what they want, and people will bow to us?
It's kind of like, ever since the Soviet Union fell, there hasn't been any sort of power that's been able to rival the US to this same extent, with the exception of Japan economically in the 1980s, 1990s. But even then, that was just on the economic frontier. Japan, as a small island country, does not have the capacity or the manpower to challenge, this unipolar hegemony led by the US. Whereas China's success is simply just doing that. And of course, I think this is just China demonstrating, hey, it's got sovereignty. It's not going to just take this nonsense from the US. If you want to mess with us, we'll mess with you too. If there are these sorts of export controls and you can no longer buy these rare earth minerals, then maybe it's time next time President Trump meets with Marshal Kim Jong-un, maybe he needs to ask him, hey, how do you guys evade sanctions imposed by us?
Okay, but then a little while later, I don't know what happened to him. This is a little while after that last quote or last tweet. Don't worry about China. It will all be fine. Highly respected President Xi just had a bad moment. He doesn't want depression for his country, and neither do I. The USA wants to help China, not hurt it. President Donald J. Trump.
Well, I mean, I think what Faye just said, China is fighting back, the bully is shocked. I think it was just Trump reckoning, or the U.S. establishment more broadly, just kind of the initial shock of the bully fighting back, and now it's just kind of accepting it and trying to cope with that fact.
Yeah, but it seems like they really, I don't know. I mean, they'll have to whether they want to or not. I think about, I don't know if you're familiar with that cartoon with the coyote and the roadrunner. And the roadrunner always gets out over his feet, and he keeps on going until he realizes that there's nothing holding him up, and then he falls. and it's unable to incorporate, at least at the level of action and discourse, that the rules have changed, that the risk board has changed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
Whether
the
you
global
want to
risk
accept it or
board
not.
has changed. And if you put this together with so that China's economic development, their political, obviously it's not all one happy family. There's always going to be internal contradictions and whatever. But what they were able to do economically, politically, culturally, and now with this military parade, and I know it wasn't the only military parade ever, to show, look, like you keep on yapping, but
Check out our toys.
this isn't going to be Saddam Hussein Iraq War II. Or
Well, yeah,
if you want to throw down that, I don't know. It was just so odd to me.
Because this time there actually are weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah, and again, here he goes again. So I'll do these two things, and then I want to talk about the material reality that at some point is gonna, the truth will out, the material reality and the historical materialism, shall we say, bites you in the ass at some point. So then he's also mad about soybeans. So this was, I cut off the date. I don't know when this was. It was sometime this week. I believe that China purposefully not buying our soybeans and causing difficulty for our soybean farmers is an economically hostile act. We are considering terminating business with China having to do with cooking oil and other elements of trade as retribution. As an example, we can easily produce cooking oil ourselves and don't need to purchase it for China. Again, it's like, are you?
They can do it.
If you have this level of attitude, the hypocrisy, either you don't care or just it doesn't register. It's like, China. Why does China have to buy your shit? It's a hostile
American
act.
soybeans are good,
Only
though, but
we get to make those hostile. Only we, like the U.S. How many countries has the U.S. sanctioned? I mean,
Yeah.
And it's amazing. And we're not talking about just soybean oil, but like medicine, like Madeleine Albright. Yeah, the 500,000 dead Iraqis that probably died because of our sanctions was worth it. That bitch. And then they say this stuff. I mean, it's amazing to me. Not that he's aware of that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't want to make him sound like an idiot. You can't get to where Trump is by being an idiot, and it's hard to know how much of it is a show or just luck. But then he gets. Go ahead.
About the sanctions, just to demonstrate how they work. I don't know. I don't know who in the audience has seen, but recently a new hospital was opened in Pyongyang. I think it's called the Pyongyang General Hospital, and they had a lot of news reports on it internally. A lot of you probably haven't seen it unless you follow them closely. But if you look at the a lot of the drugs that they have on display over there, the ones that they can't produce themselves are all smuggled in because of the sanctions. So even those life-saving medicines, they have to be smuggled in from, somewhere, and then through China or Russia over the land border into Pyongyang. And yeah.
And so
actual life-saving medications. So you're
No, it's just kind of like, when the periphery is in the periphery more and strikes back type of thing.
Yeah. So you compare that with like China choosing not to purchase U.S. soybeans. It's like, well, you're not in a position to talk when you're like preventing other countries from, having access to life-saving medications simply because they want to exercise their sovereignty or because they want to build nukes and to defend their sovereignty at the end of the day. So
yeah. And just I have to let the Xiangyu go, but I wanted to there's a great I wanted to highlight Warwick Powell's Substack, and I just stumbled across him the other day when I was preparing for this podcast.
Oh, he's the good Powell.
Yeah, sorry.
He's the good Powell.
Yeah.
Not the bad one.
But just in terms of him following this, and he writes just some of the things that will cause the U.S. A problem. Anybody that's dependent on or that requires these rare earth minerals, which are basically essential for any kind of AI or not just AI, but computational things, for weapons, for all kinds of stuff, for the smart cars, for the smartphones, for the batteries, all this stuff. You need these rare earth minerals that China is able to put export controls on a lot of it, or Also, a lot of the ports can charge extra port fees, I guess, for American ships or ships that are destined to the American market, because again, people might have forgotten, but China produces a lot of stuff. But I'm just going to read through these comments of him, and then we'll wrap up. The paradox of AI with American characteristics. When negentropy becomes entropy. So he's basically saying that all the energy and resources that go into AI and the kind of the negative feedback loops that you can get from people who are thinking it's going to be, the next best thing that's going to revive the American economy is going to be AI, and I guess expanding their empire. I don't know, taking over Venezuela, or what their grand plan is. The Gaza Riviera. Who knows what these crazy people are thinking? That's going to get them out of this overproduction crisis. TikTok, Time Matters, and Pax Americana is short on it. The West's restorative industrialism against China's compounding development. And again, I don't know. It's impossible to know what the political elite are aware of, or the people who are online. If we spend too much time online, you forget that there's this whole material world out there. But even if America was to, with the tariffs and with whatever else, and they're really going to, Marjorie Taylor Greene, for example, in response to these export controls, put out a map of the United States of where of the rare earth metal deposits the United States has, and says like, well, we don't, don't worry about it. Make America great again. We can do our own. Totally oblivious to the fact that it's not just digging the stuff up out of the ground. There's a whole industrial processing or process that has to go on from when you get just to get some of these minerals to when they're able to be in the form they are that go into the devices that you need, can take a lot of processes. And just one example that I found out preparing for this session is that there's at least 36 or 38 universities in China that provide master's programs for this processing of different rare earth minerals. In the United States, there's 0. So it's not just a matter of having the material, the natural resources. You have to be able to get it, and then you have to have the logistics and the labor and all this stuff to be able to get it in its final form. And even if they were able to do that, do they think that China's just going to pause and everybody else is just going to pause until they catch up? I mean, it's just crazy to me. And again, and also he mentions that another thing that you can't tariff your way out of for the United States is that how much higher their energy costs are than China and other parts of the world. That, and how they're gonna be in denial of that. And just one final thing, and then I'll give you the shorter, anything you want to respond to Warwick's take on this thing. I think another thing that's uncomfortable for the Western psyche, especially the kind of Western imperialist or Orientalist psyche, who's so used to us being the ones that go and observe the other, rewrite up about what we think about China or Iran or Islam or this or that. But when they start to focus and critique us, when we become the objects of analysis and critique, I think that's also going to be a bit of a mind F word. And I just wanted to read this again. It's from Warwick Powell's Substack that I would recommend. He writes on America's atomization is destiny. When Wang Huning, thank God for you, now a member of the Central Committee of Communist Party China, traveled to the United States in the late 1980s, he was struck less by its wealth than by its loneliness. America Against America is an ethnography of material decline and social disconnection. He saw a society where individuals were liberated from all traditional bonds, family, community, class, and now sex, by the way, trans women or women, but also stripped of solidarity and moral purpose that make freedom meaningful. What remained was what Wang called atomized liberty, a condition of permanent self-containment in which human relationships are transactional, trust is instrumental, and meaning collapses into consumption. The result was paradoxical, apparent material abundance coexisting with emotional deprivation, freedom breeding insecurity rather than confidence. For Wang, yeah, Wang?
Yeah.
Okay. Far from being an aberration, the emergent social enemy was a structural feature of late capitalism, a system whose efficiency in generating financial wealth also eroded the very institutions that made collective life possible. Again, cannibal capitalism that starts to feed off its preconditions for reproduction. The result was a nation in which society itself is disintegrating, leaving only individuals, markets, and lurking never far away, the coercive apparatus of the state. And, I'm like, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. This is a good thing to see this. But I think, again, it's this another example. And not that these people weren't treating the West and the U.S. as an object of analysis and critique until the last few years, but I think this is really also something that a lot of particularly the ruling elite or the people who have drank the Kool-Aid, it's really going to be hard for them to also make this transition. Yeah.
Oh, exactly.
And so on that note, anything I'll leave the last anything you want to say on any of this stuff. So Trump tariffs and Winch tweets. There's a lot of denial and bargaining and anger about adjusting to in the declining empire, the declining hegemon, or whatever you want to call it. Really to accept that China is not just appear in some areas, but is also surpassing them or has surpassed them perhaps in others.
I'd say stay calm and observe. And if the facts of reality necessitate a readjustment of your beliefs or your worldview, then just welcome it. It's better to live and see things for what they are than to live in a constant state of denial. You'll be happier and everything will make more sense, I would say.
And I would say also that there's very little to no evidence that China is out to get us whiteys, us Westies, or Iran also isn't out to get us. Islam is not coming for you. Don't worry. It's just a religion. An interesting one. Study it. But yeah. And I have to say, just on my own, I lived in China for a year, but it was a long time ago now. It was in 2001 to 2002. And it was, I hope to go back once the economic situation gets better. I'd love to go back with my kids and take one of those cool train rides across the country.
Your kids are going to be so jealous saying, oh, you lived in such a nice place such a long time ago. It's like, no, it wasn't that nice back in 2001.
Well, I was based in Shanghai, so that was pretty nice.
Even Shanghai, like I went my first time in 2007 and now it's a huge difference. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. It was nice in 2007, but compared to now, it's kind of a shithole.
Well, there you go. All right. Thank you so much. Anything you want to plug?
Yes. Are you able to play videos like on this stream?
Yeah. Well, if you send me a link, I can.
Yeah. I'm sending it right now. Because I know some things are better if it's visual. Recently, there's been a really bad typhoon, and the typhoon wasn't that bad. But what happened was in this town called Guangfu in Hualien County. It's a county. That's on the east coast of Taiwan. It's pretty rural, and the town of Guangfu was majority Amis indigenous people. What had happened was a few months ago, there was a little rock slide from a previous typhoon that created a dam and a barrier lake. And what happened was we knew that eventually this dam would break or that the barrier lake would overflow. What we didn't know was when. And then the government's been very negligent. And what happened was on September 23rd, when Typhoon Ragasa went through Taiwan, it wasn't that big of a typhoon, but the dam broke and 60 million tons of mud were unleashed into Guangfu, and the whole place looked like a war zone. And I just saw on the news, it didn't seem it seemed bad, but then it's like it didn't seem as bad as like when I actually went there as a volunteer to help clear the mud. And after just understanding the situation, yes, the government is providing relief for the people, but a lot of times the relief is based on, keep in mind, a lot of these are indigenous communities. It's more like, okay, whose household registration? It's like this house that has it's by like the house and like the address plates, but then in some indigenous communities they have like these other houses that are there but not registered in the way things are. And also the other factor is some of these houses aren't owned by the people living in there but are rented out, but it's the owners that get the relief, whereas the people living there aren't getting the relief that they need. So in response to all of this, I created a fundraiser for these people, and I connected with a local indigenous leader at the community center. Her name is Miss Nong Yi. That's her indigenous name. Her Han name is Patient, and she's promised to, I made the GoFundMe. She can see how much money it makes, and then I do the transfers. I maintain a spreadsheet for her, so there's transparency maintained on all sides. If I'm pocketing money, she'll know, and she's also promised me that she will like write a report on where this money is going, how it's being used. So I want to send you this link to kind of show.
Yeah, dude. When I do the clips for the show, also add it in there. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me open up this thing, people, and I'm gonna share my screen.
And
hopefully.
then the link to the GoFundMe is over here. I just posted it underneath.
So let's see if it's share my screen. Share screen. Oh no, that's my settings. That's not what I want.
That's the last thing I want to plug. So any contribution will help a lot, and I will be going back to Guangfu either next month or in December just to check on the situation and report from the ground, like anything new that's going on over there.
Okay, here we go.
Yes.
Please.
In Taiwan's Hualien Kangling, where Typhoon Ragasa just hit.
The situation here is very tough. Many homes were destroyed, and the community is struggling with flooding, mud, and destroyed infrastructure.
We came here as volunteers to help with relief, but once we got here, we realized the scale of the devastation is way more than we can handle. We need more help for these people on the ground.
That is why we started a GoFundMe for our international friends. Every dollar donated will go directly to the people of Hualien.
If you're watching this from abroad, please consider donating.
Even a small contribution makes a big difference.
Whether it's helping families buy food,
clean water,
or rebuild what they lost.
The link is below. Please share the video and help spread the word.
For more information, please visit the GoFundMe page.
Hualien needs us right now. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Oh, I'm frozen. Okay, so yes, and I'll add that the GoFundMe to the video description as well, and the clip part that comes later. Well, I think we did pretty good.
I think so too. I would say so as well.
Even and I appreciate you. I know that you have lots of stuff going on, so I appreciate you being able to join, and I look forward to our next conversation, because
I do apologize for.
I've told him. Well, he may not know it yet, but it's like you're my Taiwan correspondent.
Yeah.
The pay is crap, but the gratitude is high.
So I really appreciate you having me on, and I do apologize for being not as prepared as I would like and constantly delaying. It's just really because this past few weeks I've been busy doing the fundraiser and also just doing other things. You might be wondering why I have these computers in the background. Well, I've been like scraping together different computer parts to build computers to give to the people of Guangfu, like the lady at the community center, for example. Her computer got destroyed in the mud flood, and what happens is the mud, it comes and it's like it's still kind of in liquid form when it comes down, but and so then it'll go into like little vents and all nooks and crannies, and then it settles and the excess water drains. So the computer at the community center literally turned into this giant mud brick. Like you look at one of those and it's like, I've carried many computers in my life. I know how heavy they're supposed to be. I lift it up and I'm like, wait, this is easily like 50, 60 kilograms. So then I opened the side panel and it's just a mud brick. I had to like dig out the mud. Yeah, so
Okay.
that's what I've been doing.
Aren't you a nice guy? I didn't. I saw that and I figured either it's for some project he's on or he knocked off some sort of truck and he's
maybe that's how I got them.
Off-brand. He has to remove the serial numbers, sell those off-brand computers. No, just hey, you gotta eat.
Yeah.
Okay, well, good luck with all your endeavors, and we'll see you next time. Safe travels across the strait tomorrow.
All right. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
All right. So, I always go big. I don't like that. Okay, this is doable. All right. So that was Xiangyu. Xiangyu, yeah. Based in Taiwan. He does political commentary, and he's also I don't know if he's still doing the anti-imperialist rap, but he's done that. He's also has the rapping talents and, media coverage. And also apparently he's helping out. He also is a humanitarian in his spare time. So we're happy to have him be part of the Morbid Symptoms external correspondence. It's a growing network. Anyway, please do like, follow, and subscribe. Where am I on now? I'm on YouTube, X, Rumble if it's going well. Also on Substack. I try to stream there. I signed up to Kick and Twitch, and I think they're working, although I haven't totally figured that out because I went to check it the other day, and it said that I had live streamed, but I couldn't actually find the live stream, but I think it works out. Anyway, thank you very much for tuning in. Our next episode is going to be on Tuesday, 7 p.m.-ish UK time. We're going to be, Laura Jones is going to come back. And for those of you who outside the UK may not know this, but there's been a big brouhaha and feminist town between what I call the PERFs, the Palestinian excluding radical feminists, and the tags, the TERFs against genocide. It's all going down. There was a conference and there was, people complaining about Palestinian flags and whatnot. So through that recent eruption, Laura and I are going to be discussing the contradictions of contemporary feminism and whether the center can hold, especially when you have one group that is basically weaponizing feminist concern or women's concern for rape in order to manufacture consent for an ongoing genocide. How can feminists? I think that feminism is cooked. I think that Palestine will, in the end, also cook feminism, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. But tune in Tuesday for that. 7 p.m.-ish UK time. We'll be looking at the contradictions of feminism, focusing on the recent brouhaha in the UK between genocidal feminists and anti-genocidal feminists. So do tune in if you can for that one. All right. I'm going to end it now because I'm rambling on. And so it's always an indication that it's time to say goodbye. If you have any recommendation for a guest or a topic, please do let me know. We can also do, do you want to come back on the stage? No need? Okay. I can see you in the chat. Yes. Oh, he is still rapping. Okay, so he is still rapping. And he just made new music. Okay, well, I will add that. I will all your deets I will put in the video description on the various channels. So people, and with English subtitles. Cool. That's very good. Please. Thanks. All right. Yeah. Where was I? I need a coffee. That's it, people. Thank you for tuning in. Do like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate it. And let's make the second season of Morbid Symptoms a banger, shall we? We go hard in the paint, and it's few holds barred here, and occasional, and a few laughs as well. All right, take care, everyone. Here's the outro.